coming. We're with the president of the ICRC, Mirjana Spoljaric. She's going to read a short statement. She is flanked by representatives from 6 nations behind her announcing this initiative. After she reads her statement, we're going to take 2 to 3 questions max, as the ministers and representatives need to move on to the next thing. And I will call on you for questions. President Spoljaric, thanks very much.
Brazil, China, France, Jordan, Kazakhstan, and South Africa today launched a global initiative to galvanize political commitment in support of international humanitarian law. The Geneva Conventions protect victims of armed conflict. Universally ratified, they embody humanity's shared conscience, values that transcend borders and creeds. Since their adoption in 1949, they have contributed to protect the lives and dignity of millions. Yet, the suffering we witness today in armed conflicts around the world is proof that respect for and compliance with the most fundamental rules are not being upheld. Considering this, it is imperative for the international community to reiterate its political commitment and support to uphold IHL, both in letter and in spirit, leading to an alleviation of the impact of conflicts, including on civilians and civilian objects. Otherwise, the world risks witnessing spiraling conflicts leading to unprecedented human, political, social, and economic costs. The international community collectively bears the responsibility to abide by, uphold, and ensure accountability for these rules, reduce suffering, and work towards a peaceful future. Stemming the tide demands urgent action. By launching this joint initiative together with the International Committee of the Red Cross, we express our steadfast commitment to strengthen the universal, uniform, and faithful application and implementation of IHL. As the reference organization working for the respect of IHL, the ICRC will set up working groups to engage in comprehensive consultations with states and experts to address ways of preventing IHL violations, promoting the increased protection of civilian and civilian infrastructure, ensuring the safeguarding of healthcare services and medical staff, protecting humanitarian personnel, and addressing contemporary and emerging challenges. Based on these consultations, the initiative will produce concrete and practical recommendations aimed at addressing these challenges and for concrete action on the ground. The work shall culminate with a high-level meeting to uphold humanity in war in 2026. This joint effort to strengthen IHL complements a renewed global focus on advancing an agenda for peace, reinforcing civilian protection, and strengthening global governance systems, thereby ensuring more effective international cooperation and protection for the affected by armed conflict. We call on all high contracting parties to the Geneva Conventions to join this initiative to solidify sustained political will to ensure respect for, compliance with, and implementation of IHL. We are driven by a unified goal to see IHL as a guiding framework to reduce suffering and help steer armed conflicts towards a peaceful resolution. I thank you.
Obviously, there are very important global issues happening today. If you can focus your questions on the initiative in front of you, that would be appreciated. Carrie.
Thank you, Mrs. Spoljaric. Carrie Norton from Le Monde and Radio France Internationale. Can you tell us a little bit more practically what this initiative means? Because you're 6 countries now. So is there a timeline of 2 years? During those, you're going to think of practical tools? Or do you have already some ideas of what needs to be put in action?
What has to be clear is we are not launching a negotiation process. What we are launching are 7 different work streams with experts and representatives of states to look at the Geneva Conventions, to look at existing international humanitarian law, and to design practical steps towards a better implementation of international humanitarian law on the ground. Because the amount of suffering that we see today in the different conflicts, the amount of destruction that we see in the different conflicts has to be mitigated, and IHL stands for a better respect for civilians in armed conflict, but it also provides very practical elements to protect them better.
We've just concluded 9 months of negotiations towards something called the Pact of the Future. And there's an entire section on international peace and security that deals with international humanitarian law, the protection of civilians. Action 14, 15 speaks to this specifically. So in that context, why this process is needed, given that we've just gone through an entire 9 months of negotiating an outcome political document that was very, very hard to achieve. Why now engage in another process when surely this process deals with the very issues you're seeking to address?
We are basing ourselves on the Pact for the Future because the Pact for the Future addresses the validity and the importance of IHL. This is a follow-on and a complementary initiative insofar as we now have to take one step further and look at the situation in the different conflicts and see how better compliance with IHL can be ensured by militaries, by armed groups, by whoever has an influence and an impact on what is happening in an armed conflict to mitigate the pressures on civilians and to ensure humane treatment of detainees.
Hi, CCTV, Xu Dezhi. Just a quick question. This initiative, as many initiatives and urges, you don't have the binding power. So how can this initiative make a difference to the currently, I would say, deteriorating treatment on humanitarian workers and as well as the humanitarian, crisis situations?
This initiative relies on the expertise and the authority of the International Committee of the Red Cross due to our thought leadership on international humanitarian law, but also our operational experience on the ground in armed conflict over 160 years. It's an initiative launched by 6 states, but its outreach is global to galvanize support, political support, for the implementation of IHL, because the primary responsibility for the implementation in particular of the Geneva Conventions lies with states. And the ICRC welcomes sincerely the 6 states' declaration of support towards a better implementation of international humanitarian law on the ground. It's very urgent and it's very necessary.
We're going to take one last question. I don't know. Yeah, yes, please.
For some time you had an office in Rio, and in a way dealing with favelas and also this situation. How much do you think also these 6 countries have to apply to themselves as well?
The application of international humanitarian law starts at home and starts in peacetime. It is the integration of these agreements into national legislation and the building of national institutions that increase preparedness for IHL compliance for the event of conflict. It also includes, the training of military personnel and the integration of IHL compliance with the military into the military doctrines. So each state has this obligation to implement international humanitarian law in his own system and within its own different institutions.